Some people seek out the future with excitement in their eyes, hoping for love, wealth, or a sign that everything will be okay. But what if the future comes looking for you instead? Not to guide you, but to warn you, or worse, to haunt you. Tonight, let's unravel a story not about cards that tell the future, but about one that refused to lie, even when the truth was too horrific to bear. This is the story of Mare, and the night the tarot turned against her. Mare had always been curious about the unknown. While her friends grew up dreaming of careers in medicine, law, or technology, she found herself drawn to symbols, to meanings buried in signs and dreams. Ironically, she did begin her life down the expected path, enrolled in medical school in Delhi. But deep inside, she felt numb. The classrooms, the cadavers, the white lights, it all felt lifeless. Ironically, the one thing that made her feel alive was death. Or rather, the idea that there was something after it. Late at night, instead of revising anatomy, she'd sit under her blanket with her tablet, watching tarot readings on YouTube. They weren't just entertainment to her, they were an invitation, a whispered possibility that the universe had layers, and some of us were meant to read between them. She didn't drop out suddenly. It was a slow, painful unraveling. Her parents fought it hard. Her mother cried, her father grew distant. But eventually she left, moved to Jaipur, rented a small, sun-starved apartment near the old city. And there, alone for the first time in her life, she began again. Not as a student of medicine, but as a student of meaning. She studied tarot, obsessively. By the time she turned 25, Mare had a steady stream of clients. Some skeptical, some desperate, some just lonely. She never promised miracles, but she did offer clarity. A soft-spoken guide in a chaotic world. Everyone said she had a gift, but Mare never felt gifted. If anything, she often felt watched. Mare's apartment wasn't haunted. Not at first. It was just old. The kind of place that creaked when it was too quiet. Her neighbors were a retired couple who barely spoke, and the staircase always smelled faintly of damp stone. She'd furnished it modestly. A twin bed, a worn desk, shelves lined with candle jars, incense, and of course, her prized tarot decks. She didn't use just one. She collected them, some modern, others antique. One she claimed was from Romania. Its cards were worn thin, and the illustrations looked like something from a fever dream. It wasn't a happy life exactly, but it was hers, and it was quiet, until Kushi arrived. Kushi was Mare's younger sister, a college student, sharp-witted and endlessly curious. She hadn't seen Mare in over a year, not since the fallout with their parents. When she arrived in Jaipur unannounced, Mare was stunned, but thrilled. For the first time in months, the apartment felt warm. They laughed, shared stories, cooked together like old times. But Kushi hadn't just come for a visit. She came with news. Their father was dying, fast, and he wanted to see Mare one last time. It hit Mare like a punch to the chest. She felt the floor shift beneath her feet. Her chest tightened, her hands turned cold. Guilt flooded her like ice water. She promised Kushi they'd return home the next morning. But that night, something changed. Kushi, always playful, had brought Mare a gift. Tarot deck. It was antique-looking, dark green velvet pouch. No branding. The cards were heavier than usual, almost oily to the touch. The artwork was unlike anything Mare had seen before, haunting, surreal. Some of the symbols didn't even match traditional tarot conventions. "I got it from this odd little shop near campus," Kushi said. "The guy said it was special." Mare laughed nervously, but a chill danced down her spine. Still, she didn't want to offend her sister. They decided to do a reading. For fun. Lights off. A single candle between them. Shadows flickering on the walls. Kushi picked 5 cards. Love, career, family, growth, life expectancy. As Mare touched the deck, she felt something, like a pulse, a quiet resistance in the air. The cards were warm, almost alive. She hesitated. Then, from the bedroom, a sound. Soft, subtle, like paper falling. Mare froze. Kushi laughed. Probably just one of your cats of the spirit realm. Mare smiled weakly, but something inside her twisted. She rose to check the noise, and what she found would shatter everything she believed about fate, family, and the future. Let's pause and reflect before the horror escalates. Tarot cards, like any divination tool, work on a combination of symbolism and personal projection. They don't possess power in themselves, but they draw power from belief. Mare's gift wasn't supernatural, it was psychological. She was a mirror for her clients, helping them see what they already knew deep down. But belief is a double-edged sword. If you believe something enough, can it become real? Can trauma manifest itself through symbolism? Or worse, can grief summon something from the beyond? Mare was on the edge of a breakdown, isolated, guilt-ridden, and too open to energies she didn't fully understand. So when that cursed deck arrived, it didn't bring the darkness. It unlocked it. They say every tarot deck has its own spirit, some gentle, some guiding, and some that remember too much. As Meher stared at the cards her sister had gifted her, she noticed something off. The ink on the back of one card pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. When she blinked, it stopped, but it left behind a trace, a shadow where there should be none. She shook off the feeling and chalked it up to exhaustion. But inside her, something had shifted. You see, when you walk the line between the spiritual and the symbolic, between prophecy and fear, sometimes something walks it with you. Meher hadn't just left medical school to chase magic. She had run from her family, from expectations, from the silent judgment she felt every time her father looked at her and saw a doctor who chose delusion. But what if that broken connection, that guilt, was the thing the spirit fed on? Grief, regret, and a sisterly bond laced with unspoken shame, ripe for manipulation. That night, after laughter and tears, after tarot and memory, something entered, and it wore a face Meher trusted. She saw the girl in the mirror first, not standing in the room, not hiding in a corner, but inside the mirror, peeking, smiling. It wasn't joy, it was anticipation. The human mind is fragile when it trusts too easily. And Meher? She'd been longing to be seen, to be heard, just like the spirit in that house. Maybe that's why it came through her sister, a sister she loved, a sister she had wronged in ways she never admitted. Childhood promises are like spells, but what happens when you break one? Years ago, under a blanket fort, Meher had promised Kushi, "I'll never leave you," but then she did. And now, maybe the spirit wasn't just haunting the house. Maybe it was using that old promise like a key. Meher thought she was helping people read their future. But the truth? She was summoning her past, and it wanted to be seen. And then came the fifth card. All the others were blank, as if memory had been stripped away. But this one held the truth. Death. Not an ending, but a transformation. A warning. A message. And that's when the phone rang again. Her mother, crying. Kushi, gone. Meher didn't scream. She couldn't. The room seemed to close in, time slowed, and then, across from her, Kushi smiled. But it wasn't her anymore. There she was, Kushi. Same face, same eyes. But something about the way she moved was wrong. It was as if her body remembered how to be Kushi, but her soul had stepped aside. She spoke in a voice slightly out of sync, like a badly dubbed film. And her words weren't comforting. They were scripted. You left me when I was scared. You chose stories over me, so I became one. Meher didn't respond. She couldn't. Her body was frozen, but her mind was unraveling. When symbols are misused, they crack. The tarot wasn't a game. It wasn't a party trick. It was a mirror, and Meher had been reading it with dusty hands. Hands stained by denial, by guilt, by love that curdled into abandonment. The death card wasn't about Kushi. It was about her. And now the house had decided. The reading wasn't over. You can run through a haunted house. But what if the house is inside you? Every door Meher opened led back to herself. A reflection, a memory, a moment she refused to acknowledge. The time she ignored Kushi's last call. The day she skipped their meeting to read cards for strangers. The moment she chose her passion and left her sister's voice unheard. Surreal? Yes. But spirits feed on loops, and guilt is the perfect circle. There's a version of childhood we remember. Soft edges, safe arms, unbroken trust. But sometimes memory lies. Sometimes the laughter echoing in the dark isn't joy, it's mockery. Meher sat in the center of the storm now. The house was alive. Her sister's spirit, if it was ever hers, was watching. And the cards had rearranged themselves into a new spread. The Fool, the Hanged Man, the Lovers, the Tower, and again, death. At last, a break in the madness. A crack not in the house, but in Meher's armor. It wasn't a haunting, it was a call. A cry frozen in time. Kushi hadn't wanted revenge. She wanted to be heard. The spirit, the darkness, fed on the silence between them. So Meher did what she should have done long ago. She placed the torn letter on the table, bowed her head, and whispered, "I'm sorry, I'm listening now." And there it was, the last card, the star, hope, the light after darkness, a beacon for those lost in the storm. Meher hesitated for a moment before reaching for it, her fingers trembling as they brushed the edge. There was something different in the air now, the oppressive weight of guilt, the crushing presence of Kushi's spirit began to lift. This wasn't the end of a ghost story. It wasn't about revenge. It was about healing. She placed the card face up, and the light around the room changed. The oppressive air began to dissipate. The shadows started to recede, and the quiet hum of life returned to the house, as if it had been holding its breath for years. In that fleeting moment, Meher understood. The house, the cards, the spirit. It was all part of a truth she had been too afraid to confront. The real haunting wasn't Kushi's death. It wasn't the tarot. It was the absence, her failure to be there when her sister needed her most. The truth? She had abandoned her own heart long before the cards ever came into play. But redemption wasn't a grand gesture. It wasn't magic. It was small, a choice to return to what she had buried. She closed her eyes and whispered one more thing. "Kushi, I see you." The house, the cards, the air, they responded to her words. The torment receded. And then, as quickly as it had started, it was over. The house was no longer a tomb. It had become a place of reflection, of peace. Meher didn't see Kushi's ghost again, but she felt her presence, not in the oppressive shadows, but in the stillness of the room, in the soft whisper of the wind outside, the feeling that something had been righted, something had been healed. She wasn't forgiven, not yet, but forgiveness wasn't what mattered now. What mattered was that Meher had finally understood. Sometimes the dead don't want vengeance. They just want to be remembered. They want to be seen. Time heals even the deepest wounds. And sometimes, a broken heart can find its way back into the light. The cards had told their tale. Now it was her turn to tell the story. The tarot deck wasn't just about the future. It was about understanding the past. And Meher? She was ready to face whatever came next, because she had finally made peace with the ghosts that lingered in her heart. But the cards, they never tell the whole story. There's always something left unsaid, something lurking just behind the veil. And the next time she draws a card, will it be a sign of hope or a warning? Meher sat on the edge of the bed, her eyes vacant as she stared into the dimly lit room. The Jaipur house, once a symbol of comfort and childhood memories, now felt like a stranger's home. Cold, hollow, filled with echoes that refused to quiet. The tarot cards lay scattered on the bedside table, their blank faces mocking her. She reached out, fingertips brushing their surface, as if hoping they'd come to life again. But they remained silent, just like everything else. She whispered to herself, her voice barely audible, "How do you live with what you've forgotten or chosen to forget?" The silence had no answer. Only the creak of wood beneath her and the crushing weight of guilt wrapped around her shoulders like a shroud. That night, Meher woke with a start. There was a voice, faint, childlike, calling her name. Meher. At first, she dismissed it as a dream, but it came again, clearer, closer. Help me, please. Her heart thudded painfully in her chest. The air in the room felt heavy, too still. She got out of bed and followed the sound down the hallway, bare feet silent against the cold floor. The voice led her to the kitchen, and there she saw her. A small figure sat at the table, her back turned, motionless. The girl's tiny hands rested on the tarot cards, her posture eerily calm. Meher's breath caught. She stepped closer. The girl turned. It was the child from the mirror, the girl with the piercing stare. But this time, her features were clearer. Familiar, not just a ghost, a memory. Their eyes met. Meher froze. She couldn't breathe. The girl's gaze was not angry, not vengeful, just filled with sorrow. A sorrow that clung to the air like fog. "Why are you here?" Meher asked softly. "What do you want?" The girl didn't answer, but the temperature dropped. Lights flickered. Shadows danced wildly across the walls. Then, her voice finally broke the silence. "You knew me, Meher. You played with me. Before you left." The words hit like a knife. Sudden memories came crashing down. Faded summers, dusty laughter, a small hand in hers, a forgotten friend from childhood. Meher's knees buckled as she realized the truth. She hadn't just forgotten the girl. She had abandoned her. "You left me to die," the child whispered, and then she vanished. The house was empty again, but the silence was now unbearable. Meher stumbled backward, her hands trembling, her breath shallow. It was true. The girl had been her friend, her neighbor, someone she had once loved, until time and distance and selfishness had made her forget. The weight of guilt was suffocating. Then the phone rang. The sharp sound startled her. It was her mother. Her voice on the line was fragile, almost broken. "Meher, come home. There's something I need to tell you. About your sister. About what really happened." The ground beneath Meher felt like it was shifting, but something inside her knew this was the only way forward. Back in Delhi, the house looked the same, but nothing felt the same. Meher walked inside, each step slower than the last. Her mother was waiting at the kitchen table with an old photo album in front of her. She opened it to a page near the back. There, two little girls smiled up from the photograph. One of them was Meher, the other, the girl from the kitchen. "She wasn't just a friend," her mother said softly. "She was almost like a sister to you. You were inseparable." Her mother's voice cracked as she explained how the girl died. An accident that no one talked about. A memory that everyone had tried to bury. Everyone but the girl herself. "She waited for you," her mother whispered. "She needed you to remember her." Later that evening, Meher sat quietly in her old room, the tarot cards once again in front of her. This time, when she touched them, they responded. She shuffled the deck with care, no longer searching for answers, but offering remembrance. The first card, the Empress, symbol of nurturing, of reconnection. The second, the Fool, a journey of starting over. And the third, the Star, healing. Light after darkness. Meher's eyes filled with tears, not of fear, but of release. She placed her hand gently over the deck. "I remember you now," she whispered, "and I won't forget again." And then, as quickly as it had started, it was over. The house was no longer a tomb. It had become a place of reflection, of peace. Meher didn't see Kushi's ghost again, but she felt her presence. Not in the oppressive shadows, but in the stillness of the room, in the soft whisper of the wind outside, the feeling that something had been righted, something had been healed. She wasn't forgiven, not yet, but forgiveness wasn't what mattered now. What mattered was that Meher had finally understood. Sometimes the dead don't want vengeance. They just want to be remembered. They want to be seen. If you enjoyed tonight's chilling tale, don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps summon more spooky stories for you. Subscribe and turn on the bell so you never miss a night at the edge of fear. And tell me in the comments. Until next time, sleep tight, if you can.